We are now live. Over to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of East Suffolk Full Council. I am Councillor Keith Robinson, the present Chairman of the Council. And before we turn to our agenda, I would just like to say a few introductory words. Firstly, just a reminder that our meeting is being live streamed to our YouTube channel, and a very good evening to members of the public who are watching. For those of us in the conference room today, there is no fire alarm test this evening, so if you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest available fire exit, the two doors by which you entered the conference room, or the first exit on the opposite side of the room. Please do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point beside the large Redouna Park structure at the front of the building, just beyond the flagpoles. Please do not re-enter the building, but await further instruction. For information, the council consists of 55 councillors who are elected for a 4-year term. All councillors meet as the council, and this is often called full council. There are some decisions which can only be taken by the full council. For example, it is responsible for setting the budget and policy framework, which sets out the council's key policies and agreed budget for each year. Mr. Baker, the council's chief executive, will be assisting me this evening. I do have a sight impairment, which will make it difficult for me to spot members who have their hands raised because they wish to speak. Mr. Baker will therefore assist me in this regard. As one of the councillors and some supporting officers who are physically in the meeting room at Riverside this evening, we're not in Riverside, no. East Suffolk House this evening, we do have a number of other officers joining us by Zoom, and I would ask those participating in the meeting to be forgiving of any delays or interruptions. Thank you. So we go on to item number 1. Apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we do, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Bedwin, Councillor Cackett, Councillor Chiraza, Councillor Cloak, Councillor Daly, Councillor Gandy, Councillor Goldson, Councillor Jepson, Councillor Kerry, Councillor F. Mortimer, Councillor T. Mortimer, Councillor Newton, Councillor Ranger, Councillor Richardson, and Councillor Wiles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? There appears to be none. Thank you. We go on to item number 3, announcements. I'm changing the order of this a little bit. I'm first going to make a statement on the situation in Ukraine, and after that, the 3 group leaders will get the chance to add or comment on this before we go into the rest of the announcements. So, this council utterly condemns Vladimir Putin's senseless and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine. The mass casualties caused to the civilian population and the ever-increasing humanitarian crisis is at odds with any civilized behaviour. And we can only admire the way the Ukrainian people are fighting this unwarranted aggression. We also recognise that the actions of Putin do not reflect the position of Russian individuals living in East Suffolk. We stand ready, along with other district councils and the county council, the voluntary sector, the Suffolk Resilience Forum, Suffolk Refugee Support, and our MPs to provide support to any refugees in East Suffolk in any way the government requests that is within our power. If you wish to help with money and items, please donate to an accredited organisation, for example, the International Red Cross, the UN Refugee Agency, or the Disaster Emergency Appeal Fund. Thank you. And if the leader would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members. I know I speak for all the Conservative group when I say I wholeheartedly and unreservedly support the content and sentiment of your statement. We here in East Suffolk are fortunate to live in a safe and secure part of a free and democratic nation. The images, the stories that have been shared on media channels remind us of how lucky we are to enjoy such freedoms. Many of us, like so many of our communities, are keen to offer what aid and support we can to seek to minimise the level of harm and suffering. We at East Suffolk Council have always prided ourselves in seeking to provide practical support rather than just consolatory words. We must look at all opportunities to fully engage and support the government's ambitions in respect of the refugee sponsorship. At the time of penning this announcement, there was over 150,000 offers of sponsorship, which are recorded here on the government.uk website. The logistics of delivering this are being worked through at speed. We also need to ensure that members of our local communities who identify as either Ukrainian or Russian are fully supported through this crisis. The latest census information records 40 residents who identify as Ukrainian within East Suffolk and 80 who identify as Russian. It is very likely that we in East Suffolk will see a number of refugees coming to our area. These will likely be individuals and families that have extreme and complex needs and will continue to do so even after their arrival. Many will have families and friends still in direct danger. We need to offer all the practical support that we can. I'm therefore today announcing the appointment of a new Assistant Cabinet Member post of Refugee Support. This new role will report directly to me, but will seek to pull together the various areas of the Cabinet portfolios which are likely to be impacted upon. I think mainly of those of communities, health and housing. The post holder will become the go-to person who will maintain an up-to-date overview of the response required, be a single point of contact for members with questions, and have a delegated authority from me to make decisions and direct activities. Members, I'm very pleased to announce that I offered this role to Councillor Judy Cloak, and she has accepted. I'm sure members will agree that Judy has a proven track record in delivering for her local community. She comes with a proven track record and a wealth of experience in working with civil servants across a number of complex and challenging areas. I can think of no one better to carry out this role. Judy is not here with us tonight, but has told me that she is ready and willing to do all she can to support the refugee process and to aid community cohesion. This post will take effect from the 1st of April, but I know that Judy is already reading papers and looking at guidance so that she can hit the ground running. I'm sure that she will be able to count on the support of members right across the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Topping for the LGI group.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got to say, I wasn't expecting that, leader, and I am delighted that you have actually put Judy Cloak in that position. Couldn't have chosen better myself. It's difficult for us to express what we feel, as it feels so inconsequential when compared to the enormity of what has happened to Ukrainian people. I started to write a speech, but decided instead to tell 2 short stories. I do have Ukrainian people living in my ward. Monday, week before last, a young Ukrainian man from my ward went over to Poland to bring his 2 nieces, female cousins, not nieces, back to England to live with him and his family. The young females had travelled across the Ukraine and across the border into Poland. Their aunt had filled in their visa details on the Saturday prior to their son travelling to Poland. Short-term accommodation, and with their cash running very low, they are still waiting for their visas to come in.
Quarters of East Suffolk Council would be seen to be appropriate. It will be a small act, which will be a clear public statement to show that we as a district, as a council, and as a community, we stand in solidarity with the people in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we revert back to normal procedure. And I will do the chairman's update, members. I attended the tree release ceremony on the 15th of March, where we planted 7 trees at Wood Meadow. Thank you, James. And I was supposed to attend the Suffolk AGM and the High Sheriff of Suffolk's Justice Service. I'm afraid COVID got in the way, and I thought it best not to infect half the upper levels of Suffolk Lovely. And the vice chairman attended the tree release ceremony at Rosedale Park, Lowestoft on the 11th of March. Thank you. Leader, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some announcements this evening. Apologies, I've got a few by the look of it. First of all, members, I'd just like to take this opportunity to make a statement regarding the news that Sentinel Leisure Trust has ceased trading. We were saddened and disappointed that they have taken this decision, and our thoughts are with all those who have been affected as a result. The Trust previously managed leisure facilities on behalf of East Suffolk Council until the decision was taken in October 2019, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, to review and seek applications for the future management of our leisure services in the north of the district. This was undertaken as per the agreed terms of the contract and to ensure that we secure the best possible value for money and quality of service for our local taxpayers and communities. Sentinel were entitled to bid, however they chose not to. Everyone active were appointed to manage our facilities, and staff transferred their employment by 2P regulations to the new provider. In October 21, Sentinel also confirmed it would no longer be operating Bradwell's Phoenix Pool and Gym nor the Marina Centre in the Great Yarmouth Borough, after again deciding not to bid for new operational contracts to run these sites. Following their decision to cease trading, representatives of Sentinel chose to speak with the media to present their views in relation to financial settlements with the two councils. These are not matters which we believe should be debated in the press. However, I can confirm that discussions with Sentinel have been ongoing, and I can also confirm that Sentinel were fully aware of our position. We do not believe that they are owed the amount of money they are seeking, and as protectors of the public purse, the council simply cannot pay out money that it does not believe is due. Additionally, Sentinel's representatives are aware, as part of these discussions, that we are pursuing recompense for monies which we consider to be owed by the Trust to the council. This matter has not been resolved prior to the Trust announcement. However, a without prejudice meeting is being arranged to include the recently appointed insolvency practitioner. We now hope that these discussions will bring this matter to a conclusion. Finally, I would like to repeat my thoughts and sympathies for those that have lost their jobs as a result of Sentinel's decision to close. This is clearly a worrying time for them, and I can confirm where vacancies arise within facilities managed by our providers, applications from former Sentinel staff will be welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second announcement this evening relates to citizens' advice and outside body representation for that. As members will be aware, we appoint a number of outside bodies each year, and members provide reports to full council on a regular basis. We currently have 3 separate citizens' advice organisations covering our district. They are as follows: the Citizens' Advice at Leiston, Saxmundham District, which is supported by Councillor Tony Cooper. Citizens' Advice Felixstowe District, supported by Councillor Mark Jepson, and again Citizens' Advice North East Suffolk, which was also supported by Councillor Tony Cooper. We have been advised that from the 31st of March 2022, all Citizens' Advice organisations will merge into one organisation for the whole of East Suffolk. Therefore, we now need to appoint one councillor to support the new Citizens' Advice for East Suffolk. Using my delegated authority and following discussions with the affected councillors, Councillor Tony Cooper has been appointed to this outside body for the remainder of the 21-22 municipal year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bear with me, I'm getting there. I've also been advised of a new outside body that we need to appoint to. It is the Patrol, Parking and Traffic Regulations Outside London Adjudication Joint Committee. It's again an outside body. As this outside body relates to transport matters, I've appointed Councillor Norman Brooks, Cabinet Member for Transport, with immediate effect, again using my delegated authority to that post. So that's Parking and Traffic Regulations Outside London Adjudication Joint Committee. Roll top of the tongue. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but don't go away. I have one more. So Community Governance Review Working Group. Members be aware that we're carrying out a community governance review. As such, we need to appoint a community governance review working group. The group will consist of 5 members and will be politically balanced. Therefore, there will be 3 Conservative, including myself, 1 GLI member and 1 Labour member. Plus, we will need a named substitute for each political group. The group leaders and myself have been in conversation, and the following have been nominated to fill those spots. So the 5 substantive members of the working group will be myself, Councillor Tony Cooper, Councillor Tony Fryatt, that's 2 Tonys, can't have too many Tonys, Councillor Peter Byatt and Councillor John Fisher. They'll be the 5 members of the working group, and the 5 substitutes will be Councillor Chris Blundell, Councillor Mike Deacon and Councillor David Bevan. And I think, Mr. Chairman, unless I've missed any, I have got to the end of my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got the cabinet members now. I believe Councillor Cook, you've got some announcements.
Chairman, yes, I have 1 or 2 announcements, not quite as many as the leader, thankfully. I just wanted to update Council on the financial measures that we've put in place for those residents in need of our support through the various schemes. Through the Hardship Fund campaigns, during February, Anglia Revenue Partnership ran 2 targeted take-up campaigns to help distribute the remaining council tax hardship pot from 2020-21, which have been carried forward into this year as an exceptional hardship fund. The campaigns targeted, firstly, those who have already demonstrated hardship this year by claiming discretionary hardship payments or exceptional hardship payments, and who had council tax arrears in this financial year. And secondly, those who had fallen into arrears with their council tax in this financial year, but had no historic arrears. £1,000 Sorry? I should continue.
Yeah, continue.
I should continue. On the 27th of February, there was just over £122,000 of the fund remaining. And by running these 2 campaigns and introducing a very quick and efficient claim process, we have now awarded a total of nearly 111,000, providing much needed financial support to no less than 374 households across the district. In respect of the COVID Additional Relief Fund, CARF, for business rate reliefs, invitations to apply for this relief have been issued this week. The issue of a subsidy control for one of our major ratepayers has now been resolved, and actually means that the council should now be able to provide a greater degree of support than originally envisaged to over 2,000 businesses from its allocation of government funding of some £7.9 million. In respect of the council tax energy rebates, the council tax rebate scheme announced by the government will mean most households in band HD will receive £150 non-repayable rebate. Discretionary funding is also being provided to billing authorities to support households who are in need but not eligible under the main scheme, or to top up main scheme payments. Any unspent funding as at the 30th of November will need to be repaid to the government, but in the event of an overspend, unfortunately, no additional funding will be provided. In respect of the main scheme, councils are expected to make direct payments to eligible households who pay their council tax by direct debit by late April, early May. Where there is no direct debit instruction held for an eligible household, the council is expected to make all reasonable efforts to contact the household as early as possible to invite them to make a claim. Council should include an option for residents who are digitally excluded in their claim process, and we shall do so. Councils can offer a direct credit to the council tax account for those who either request it via the claim route or who do not make a claim within a set timescale. In other words, nobody will be left out. There is also a discretionary scheme where councils can determine locally how to make use of this funding, but it could include households in the band E to H who are on low income, and discretionary payments can, if necessary, exceed £150. The fund can also be used to top up the £150 main scheme payments for those suffering financial hardship on a low income. The current position The statutory wording and leaflet have been included with council tax bills and website has been updated. Details of the main scheme are being discussed and finalised by all ARP authorities. Options are being considered to make maximum use of the discretionary funds and ensure we target those most in need of the additional financial help. Alternative payment methods are being looked at to help us reach the most vulnerable customers, and we are keen to make direct credits to council tax, accounts for those who request it or those who do not engage in the claim process. ARP will administer the payments and provide a dedicated customer phone line for all partners and provide pre and post payment assurance checks. And ARP software provider are aiming to provide functionality to administer the scheme and commence payments by late April. Chairman, that's all the financial news I have, but there's one other matter I just would like to raise in connection with the Ukraine situation, and that is that thanks to my ward colleague, Councillor Freeman, and to the office of Dr. Dan Coulter, there is a family of Ukrainians on its way, presently in Switzerland, hopefully soon to be in Paris, and onward to a sponsor family who are going to look after them in the village of Branderson in our ward. And we're kind of proud that we've been involved in there to make that happen. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Brooks has an announcement.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a brief update. For those may have heard, may have not, there's something called Transport Leagues Forum, which is a body which represents the counties in the East of England on lobbying the government for improvements and transport schemes. As from last week, I was appointed to the forum as a representative for the district councils in Suffolk. We've not had that before from ours. We had another representative who wasn't actually doing it, but sorry, it's a fact he wasn't. Sorry. That's all right. Anyway, from last week, I was appointed to the position and taken up the post. And the good news is that we've submitted a bid to the government for funding for keeping bringing forward future plans, which are agreed to, and it's £3 million over the next 3 years to keep the system working. So it's very good news for everybody, and we'll be starting work in earnest very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of Cabinet? Councillor Rudd?
Thank you, Chairman. Just an update on avian flu, which is has very low rate for infection with members of the public. Just to say that our environmental health team have been offering their services to Suffolk County Council in this area, and they have been most grateful for our help. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now it's the turn of the Chief Executive.
No announcements for the evening, thank you, Chairman. No,
Thank you.
not that I'm aware of anyone.
Yeah, okay.
The fire's got to come in.
Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Joe. So, it's just a query. I don't have my copy of the Constitution handy, but when we have announcements from the leader and members of the Cabinet and the Chief Executive, are we allowed to put questions to them or not? No. Thank you. Just asking for a friend. Thank you.
Okay.
Always happy to receive an email.
Oh, okay. We go on to questions from the public. Well, there aren't any. So then we go to questions from members, and there aren't any. We go to petitions, and there aren't any. And we go to notices of motion. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Thank you very much. So noted. Okay. So now we go on to item eight. Sorry, I'll put my teeth in. Adoption of a local government associated model code of conduct for councillors. I'll invite the leader. Carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. The purpose of this report is to consider and adopt the local government association's new model code of conduct for councillors, with effect from the 1st of May 2022. The model code does not differ significantly in content from the local code already in operation in East Suffolk, although some of the language used is different. However, it does provide additional clarification and guidance to assist members. It also includes the forms and types of communications that are within its scope. So that's face-to-face meetings, online or telephone meetings, written communications, verbal and non-verbal communications, electronic and social media communications, including post statements and comments. There are also new commitments to cooperate with any investigation should a complaint be received and to comply with any sanctions that may be imposed if a breach is proven. These are important to protect the integrity of the process. The Audit and Governance Committee met on the 14th of March this year to consider this new code, and its recommendations from that meeting will be reported verbally to this meeting this evening by Councillor Lynch in just a few moments. Currently, Suffolk County Council, the 5 district councils in Suffolk, and all the town and parish councils in Suffolk have adopted the existing Suffolk Code of Conduct, which is attached, members, at Appendix A to the papers that you've got, to which all councillors agree to abide by upon signing their declaration of office. All 5 monitoring officers in Suffolk are now recommending that their council adopts a new code so that there is a consistent approach to the standards across Suffolk, and so members who are both district and county councillors are subject to the same code. The monitoring officers will also be encouraging any parish councils in their area to adopt the new code of conduct, but the adoption of the new code is ultimately a matter for each individual parish council in Suffolk to consider and determine. Mr. Chairman, I'll pause here so that we can hear from Councillor Lynch, and I'll then happily take any questions from members before moving the recommendations.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Lynch.
Thank you very much. As I know you'll have all read it, it's quite a large paper, so I'll try and keep it fairly brief. The adoption of the Local Government Association Code is very much recommended that we take this on from the 1st of May 2022. The plan is we, across the whole of Suffolk, work on the same basis, because if every council, every parish, every town all work off the same code, it makes it an awful lot easier for all of us to work together, especially for those that are doing more than one job. So, like myself, where I'm with Kesgrove Town Council, I expect to be working under the same code as I am here. We're going to be supported by this in this process by SALC. They believe it and they've already started it, and also with NAUC. So I think it's something the code makes it all fair and equal for everybody if everybody's using the same code. The code itself is a result of a national review by the LGA. Really, the idea was to make it fit for purpose for 2022, where we are now. Like everything, it does need updates. The main changes are really to enhance the things where we're looking at mutual respect, and even more important, where it doesn't matter what your personal or your political differences are, we've all got to respect each other. We've all been through things at this council and other areas where people have not done that, and it's really trying to enhance that. It further clarifies the actions of the councillor when you're out there. So it's quite important we all understand the rules. So if you haven't fully read it, please go back and have a quick look through the rules. It looks a lot harder at the disposable interests. We all know there are certain cases where there has been instances in the past where people haven't disclosed things. So it's been cleaned, it's been freshened up, so there should be a lot clearer as to what should or should not be disclosed. The only thing that unfortunately doesn't change about this is the sanctions. The sanctions are controlled by law. So if we all get the same code, there is hope that the sanctions will be reviewed late in 2022. And maybe we'll see some enhancements there. Audit and Governance will keep fighting for the sanctions to be better or more flexible and with more harder sanctions available. But at that moment, in this moment in time, that's all we can do. So please all support this. It really is important that you support it. And even more important, when you're at your town and parish council meetings, really reiterate to them, let's get them all onto the same code. They don't have to do any other hard work. Hard work's been done by the LGA. All they've got to do is say, yep, we like it, we're supporting it, and we're going to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Councillor here.
And Councillor Smith-Light, I thought your hand went up first. Or I saw a finger waving about, so that probably was it. Okay, Councillor Pitcher.
I think I jumped the gun. Apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Isn't much a question, it's a comment. And if anyone who hasn't read it, they get some very good examples of what is chapter on what isn't, well worth looking at.
Thank you. Clarity is key. Okay, anybody else?
Councillor Byatt.
Councillor White, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Really just to reiterate, it's a comment again, not a question, just to reiterate what you said about the meeting, the Audit and Governance meeting. It was a very thorough discussion. It was a privilege to be there and take part in it. And that obviously just want to echo the fact is we've got these nearly 100 pages of guidance here, which are really useful. And I'm looking forward to those being disseminated to other councils at a different tier so they can really thoroughly understand them about how they're going to behave in the future. But again, the sanctions, we know that's difficult to do, but it has strengthened it. And these examples, as Malcolm has just said, it would require a bit of an idiot not to be able to understand that you should look at this and actually make sure you're sticking to what's to be said. So thank you, and obviously we totally support this.
Okay. Anybody else? I see nobody. Leader, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we did slip silently into debate there, but never mind. It's a very short recommendation that I shall move, which is that the LGA model of conduct is adopted with effect from the 1st of May 2022. And I call for a second, and I think I have.
Councillor Lynch, yes. Okay, thank you. Does anybody wish to go and debate on this? No? Okay, we'll go straight to the vote then. All those in favour? Yes, unanimously. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? No, that's done. That's good. Lovely. Thank you. Item number 9. Proposed changes to council procedure rules in the Constitution. And I'd like to invite the leader to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this report is to consider proposed changes to the council and committee's procedure rules in the Suffolk Council's constitution, which the monitoring officer does not consider to be minor amendments. These proposed changes needed to be considered by the Audit and Governance Committee, and if endorsed, be recommended to full council for approval. The Audit and Governance Committee, as previously mentioned, met on the 14th of March 2022, and its recommendations will again be reported verbally in a few minutes by Councillor Lynch. As you'll all be aware, the council must have a written constitution which has to include its standing orders, codes of conduct, and other such documents as the council considers to be appropriate. A new constitution was drafted when East Suffolk Council was created, and the constitution was approved by the Shadow Council for East Suffolk at its meeting on Monday, the 28th of January 2019, all those time ago. The constitution is regularly reviewed by the monitoring officer with the assistance of the Democratic Services team to ensure that the constitution remains fit for purpose and up to date. The proposed changes will address those matters which have been identified and will ensure that the Constitution reflects the Council's needs, working practices and procedures. The Audit and Governance Committee also recommended that changes to the Constitution be reviewed in May 2023, which I will be adding subsequently as recommendation 6 in the papers you've got there. Mr. Chairman, I shall pause at this point, and again, if we could hear from Councillor Lynch, and then I'm happy to take any questions or slip silently into debate at your direction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Lynch.
Thank you very much. As all members in this room know, we've been through quite an interesting start to East Suffolk. We started all off in the chambers, and then we moved on to Zoom and Teams, and the meetings then worked that way. Then we've slowly partially come back into the chambers. So there's been a lot of variation, and it's trying to really look and ensure that the policies and procedures are all working well. It was felt that some changes were needed, so Audit and Governance had quite a hard look at it, and it's hoped that the changes that we're about to make are going to be something for the better. We believe it's going to be something for better, but obviously
Nothing is set in stone. So if it doesn't work, that's why we're looking at having a review day. Because obviously what we want to do is make this fair for everybody. It's really important that everybody has their say and can raise questions, issues, and motions. It really, really is important that they can do that. What we also have to do is make it easier and simpler so that everybody has this. We're going to achieve this with a standard form, the system, and as you'll have seen in the paperwork, that has led to a clear flow chart on a common template. We're going to be looking at 100 words for questions, 250 words for motions. So that gives people some guidance and we know where we are. To do that, we need to incorporate this in appendices B, C, D, and E. This is really going to then allow the leaders of the council and the group leaders to discuss and agree these motions and where the right venue is for those motions to be brought forward. Because not every time is it going to be correct to bring it to this chamber initially, because it might go to like one that's come to Audit and Governance at the moment, where we'll go through Audit and Governance, but at the end of it, it still comes back to the chamber. But Audit and Governance, we've reviewed it, been through it. Anybody's welcome to come to the meetings and bring their viewpoints. So we believe this is the right way forward. We do listen to everybody. So one of the things that we want to do is recommend that in the new council, the Audit and Governance will meet and have a look and review those changes. At this state in time, as Chairman of Audit and Governance, I can't give a date that they have to review it because nobody knows who the new chairman is. We can recommend it, and then that will be down for the new Audit and Governance and the new council in a year's time to review it and bring it forward if they feel reviews are necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Leader? Councillor Smith-Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I welcome Councillor Lynch's comments on this. It does say in the text that if the motion is out of order, illegal, irregular, improper, or vexatious, and I think this is an extremely broad and unclear set of definitions. Everything other than the word illegal is open to interpretation and abuse, and I feel there is a risk the administration may lean on democratic services to disallow motions they don't want debated under these unclear definitions. Please, can you offer some clarity, preferably give examples of what would be deemed irregular, improper, vexatious, and out of order? Opposition and challenge are very important, especially in the public domain, to the way democracy functions.
Excuse me,
and we must not start the debate for the sake of it. Thank you.
I didn't hear a questioning now. That's only.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very happy to take it. If only so that I can say the accusation that I or any of my members would lean on any officer, and that leaning would be successful, I find extremely offensive. I think the reality of that is simply not something that anyone would do. And I'm sure that the monitoring officer of democratic services and the chief exec would absolutely not permit it should it be tried, and rightly so. The monitoring officer is an independent member of this council. It's a position that is held and is required to be held to ensure that fairness and democracy is maintained, and they act without fear or favour. So I totally refute that. If the words that you call are words that we would take in their general meaning, as defined in the English Oxford English Dictionary, as there is no legal definition within our constitution of those rules, so that would be down to the interpretation of the monitoring officer, who, as I say, is completely unbiased. I reject that question outright.
Thank you. Councillor Patience.
I'm seeking guidance on this, but I don't want the leader to come at me again. No, I know. I'd like to propose an addition to the first of these recommendations, which is to the 100 words. I would like to add that any response to a member's question will also be limited to 100 words. In transparency, we know some of the questions that we ask are 2 or 3 words, and the responses are 5 or 6 pages long. So to make it fair and equitable, I would like to say that with your permission.
Well,
I'm sorry.
through you, Mr. Chairman, if the member is proposing an amendment, this is not the right place to do it.
Yeah.
We're with questions at the moment, but as soon as those recommendations have been moved, you are perfectly entitled to move your amendment, which I will speak against at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Deacon?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, may I ask the leader, on page 122, para 9.4, it states that no member may be permitted to read out another member's question. My question is, why does equality and diversity appear to be ignored in our constitution in this regard?
Well, that's a very good question, Councillor Deacon. I would value the input of the Audit and Governance. I like you. I read the words, and the words have always been there. If that is something that this council thinks isn't right, then I don't have a problem with it. You know, the question's a question. If the question comes from Councillor Deacon, but is read out by Councillor Byatt, the question's a question. But I would defer to the monitoring officer as to whether there is any constitutional reason for that, or perhaps ask Audit and Governance to look at it at their next review of the constitution rather than confusing this one.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That provision that Councillor Deacon has referred to has been in the constitution that was adopted by full council prior to the new council coming into being in 2019. To date, it hasn't been challenged, so it hasn't been referred to Audit and Governance Committee. But if that's something that members are generally interested in the Audit and Governance Committee considering, that's certainly something I can take with my next update report.
Somebody else reads it out.
Yeah.
Originator doesn't
You don't get a second. Don't get a
That's
supplementary.
So, Dr. Audit and Governance, yeah, we'll just do as we're told, legally.
Chair, I don't know quite whether this is the right time to do this, but can I propose that this is referred to Audit and Governance? Because there could easily be a situation where the person that has proposed or asked the question is sitting in the room with laryngitis or whatever else and simply cannot ask the question. There may be all sorts of reasons why it can't happen. So, you know, I really would like that to be taken into account.
I think in my previous experience here and other places, if somebody was in that situation, if they're present, I've been in a situation where somebody else has had to read it out for them, but because they're present, they get a supplementary. If they're not present, they don't get a supplementary. Question.
Take it to Audit and Governance.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Christine will take it through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, the leader, would you like to do your next bit?
I would like to read out these recommendations in full, as suggested. Even though they're exceedingly long, I should do it anyway. Recommendation 1, that full council instructs the monitoring officer to amend the council procedure rules in the constitution. A, to require members to submit their questions to democratic services on the question template form and to limit members' written questions to no more than 100 words. B, to require members to submit their motions to democratic services on the motions template form and to limit members' written motions to no more than 250 words. C, to incorporate appendices B, C, D and E of this report into East Suffolk Council's constitution. Recommendation 2, that full council instructs the monitoring officers to convene a meeting of the chairman and the group leaders, to discuss and seek to agree the venues for each submitted motion for council after the deadline for motions to be submitted for full council has passed and before the date of the meeting of full council pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 11.4. 3, that full council instructs the monitoring officer to incorporate motions and report flowcharts, Appendix C and D, into the Council Procedure Rules in the Constitution. 4, that full council instructs the monitoring officer to amend the council procedure rules to require members to read their questions and motions out aloud at full council. And 5, that full council instructs the monitoring officer to amend paragraph 11 of the committee procedure rules to require that at least half of the members of the committee present need to request a recorded vote for there to be a recorded vote. And 6, and this is the one that's probably not in your papers, members, that changes to the constitution be reviewed in May 2023. I so propose and call for a seconder.
Councillor Lynch, yes.
Thank you. Now.
Thank you.
Oh.
Now we move into debate.
Call for the vote.
Anybody wish to debate this?
Oh, Councillor Bird.
Councillor Bird?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I should have raised this under questions. Just looking at the appendix, it deals with the motion guidance and template, and under the section under grounds upon which a notice of motion could be rejected by the monitoring officer. Bullet point 2 states if a motion is vague and unequivocal. If the intention behind that is removing motions that are ambiguous, should that not read if a motion is vague and equivocal, not unequivocal? So I would suggest before we vote on this, somebody, either the mover or somebody, needs to suggest an amendment that wording be changed, because it's not simply a typo or something. At the moment, it's actually expressing a completely contrary meaning than the one intended, I would suggest. So I think that needs to be amended by somebody before we vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, for a university education. If only I'd had one, I'd have probably spotted
University
that
of York.
Yeah, University of York indeed. Yeah. If only I had had that opportunity. That is something I'm sure that the monitoring officer is within his powers to amend,
yes,
regardless of whether we amend it at this point or not. It's a minor amendment that needs requiring, and he has delegated authority to so do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Ribbott, were you waving?
No, I certainly wouldn't challenge Councillor Bird on his radio.
Okay, so nobody else was. Oh, Councillor Craig.
Oh, thank you. Peter's on, yeah. Yeah. It seems that we rarely get any feedback on the progress of motions once they've been dealt with by full council. For example, the motion that the Greens put with the support of the Tories on matters such as car sharing and using public transport, there have been no reminders councillors or staff. I'd like to suggest an amendment along the lines of quarterly reports will be provided on the progress of all motions that have been either accepted at full council or that have been delegated elsewhere, i.e. committees or task and finish groups.
So are you moving an amendment? Yeah. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Gooch. Okay, so we'll have a vote on this amendment. The questions first. Sorry, I'm trying to go home.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we in debate on this motion? Is that where we are? Thank you very much. I acknowledge the concerns. However, there is a process that is set out within our constitution that covers that. So if a motion, for instance, is moved from this place to cabinet, cabinet are required within our constitution to report back to full council. That is done and complied with on each and every occasion. If it wasn't, I would have the monitor officer chasing me. So the reality of that is that the amendment that's proposed is unnecessary and in fact may well cause delay for things to be reported back to full council, because we then be going, oh, we don't have to report that back now, we've got a few months before we need to. The reality is it comes back to full council at the next available full council is what happens at the moment. Not always say it'll be resolved at that point, but certainly information comes back to the next full council. So I would reject that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Craig, you happy? Councillor Craig, you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So the amendment is withdrawn.
The amendment's withdrawn at this point, I believe. Yes, yeah. Okay. So we carry as normal. Now we're going to.
Are there any other?
Yeah, any other more debate? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. Yeah. Once again, just thanking Jeff for the invite to Audit and Governance. Now, this was also debated with great interest at Audit and Governance, and I'm sure you'll recall that I spoke about this, about a possible way forward with motions. We've been reminded on a number of occasions by the leader that he welcomes ideas from all members, and of course these ideas do come as fruition, later fruition as motions. The agenda item before us tonight came about because of concerns raised about motions. We've been told that motions are too long, too short, that when they're proposed it wasn't possible to discuss them because there wasn't enough information to permit informed debate. I have no issue with limiting the motion to 250 words, as I can appreciate that brevity with clarity would be welcome by members, especially when they want to get home. What I am concerned about is how this amendment would actually pan out, how this item would actually pan out in practice. May I refer you to page 133 of the papers tonight, motions guidance and template. Step 2. Full council needs, once the motion has been read out in full and moved, the full council needs to consider whether or not to discuss the motion at that meeting, or whether it would prefer to refer it on to Cabinet or another relevant committee for consideration. This is the point where the mover of the motion will be invited to state their case, and they can explain why they believe that full council should approve their motion. And it says, make sure you include all relevant information. And I really appreciate the paperwork in this document about the templates we've provided as a flowchart. So where does the problem? Time after time, we've reached this point with the proposer giving a detailed account of why their motion is debated, and in the majority of cases, the leader has spoken and said, it's obvious that it's not going to be possible to debate this motion tonight because members haven't had a chance to absorb the information in that motion because it's been read out that night. The motion is batted away, perhaps to a committee or a task and finish group, thus delaying any possible benefits of the motion becoming council policy or practice sooner rather than later. I have an amendment to this. I would suggest to give members ample time to read the background to a motion and know where I'm coming from, so that they will be fully informed about any such motion. They would need to have that information before the full council meeting. I propose that when a motion is submitted to Democratic Services, the proposer could also provide a document containing background information about the motion. This can be an appendix to the motion and will be published with full council papers. We are asked a week before council to read document after document which we are expected to read and understand. It explains it more often than not in simple terms for people like me. When I submitted this idea at Audit and Governance last week, it was suggested that it wouldn't be possible to do this because any members of full council would need to be fact-checked by an officer. We have just re-adopted the LGA Code of Conduct, in which it mentions the Nolan Principles. If members can't be trusted to present factual information to other members in full council, then is that not questioning their honesty and integrity? Putting that to one side, all motions that come from both opposition groups are researched by our respective political assistants. They are very thorough in their research and they provide all the information we need for our motions. Those political assistants are officers of East Suffolk. So those motions have been fact-checked by an officer of this council. And they've been checked well before full council. By all means, limit the length of the motion, but can we please do something about what is really a farcical situation where motions are constantly knocked back and discussion delayed through claimed lack of information. including an appendix to a motion, would remove this issue at a stroke. Otherwise, it's going to seem very odd to an outsider that this administration seems to be trying to stifle debate. Not really very democratic. Our group cannot support this item and this particular this issue is addressed. Or is there a simpler explanation? Is it that some members opposite, and I look at the age range of it, perhaps you just want to get motions out of the way and not have lengthy debate because it's, you know, getting in the way of getting home to your Horlicks. But, you know, it's a Thank you. No, indeed, I didn't name any member.
Yeah, but you were looking in this direction.
So my proposal is, Chair, you know, in all seriousness, that we do consider adding an appendix when a motion is submitted to Democratic Services. That means that we could have that informed debate. Now, I've always welcomed, you know, Steve in his first speech as leader of this council talked about welcoming ideas from across the council. And I believe that, you know, it's not me trying to be funny in any way. I know that in the conversations we've had, I know you do welcome those ideas. And I think those ideas are usually acted on across the council. There are times when ideas are, shall we say, owned by other people, but then that's politics. We know that. But, you know, to me, it would make our debating much better informed. Thank you, Chair.
It sounded like an amendment.
I can word it if you wish. Do you wish me to word an amendment?
Yeah. If you wish to.
Thank you. Stated you down. The amendment is that when motions are submitted to Democratic Services, the proposer may also include an appendix with further information, further factual information about that motion to permit informed debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a second to that motion? Councillor Deegan? Okay. Any questions on that motion? Councillor Leader? Yes.
Thank you. Often, you know, as people get older, they forget to turn their mic off. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Peter. And yeah, too. I have some very limited sympathy with what it is that you're proposing. I think where it falls down, though, is the fact that you and I both know that, you know, we sit in different political camps. Yeah. And I can produce a paper with the help of my Conservative political assistants, which actually really supports the Conservative ethos. And I can present that to all of your members. I'm not sure many of the members sitting opposite here would agree with everything that's in that paper. But I'm telling you it's fact, because I fact checked it. And my political assistant, an officer of this council, has looked at that, and believe me, she's fact checked it too. So are you going to accept that? As that's the argument, therefore now we can debate this going forward. No, you're not going to accept it, because it's not going to take you forward. Now we can then, you know, you can then reject it. We can go into a very, very long debate. But the reality is that we're coming at it from different angles. You're going to say something in the chamber in respect of that I've got no idea whether it's true or not. What we need is time to consider what are very, very important issues and actions that you're asking this council to do by way of a motion. And motions are not restricted just to opposition. It is entirely appropriate for any member of this council to raise a motion. But the reality of that is that what we need to then do is to have the time to really research it, to really look at it. I looked at some motions that happened in that was passed in a different tier of the local authorities within Suffolk. One slightly higher than us. That narrows it down. I give you that. Yeah. But what was it? It wasn't a motion to do anything. It was a statement wrapped up in a motion, and that's what I fear is where we are potentially heading with these. I would much rather actually that if you come up with a really good idea, first of all, we are all receptive to those good ideas outside of full council. But if you come up with a really good idea at full council and want that to have a motion, let's take that and let's put that somewhere that can work that up into something that is meaningful and substantive. Let's send it to the environmental task group if it's something that, because that's where they've got the time, they've got the expertise, they've got the experience to measure that, and we don't have those skills and experience freely in full council. They don't have the time to support and research and everything that goes with that. If it's something that is going to impact on the resources and the finances of this council, then let's take it to cabinet. Let's get the officers in, let's get them around that table, let's have that meaningful debate where it's not time critical, and allow the cabinet member for resource to fully consider it and to come back to full council, which is what we're required to do, as I explained previously, and to say at that point, okay, we've taken this to cabinet, we've listened to that, we've looked at it, and this is the advice that has come forward as a result of that, and that's how we want to deal with this motion. So I accept the fact of what you're trying to achieve, Peter, but I don't believe that this amendment will achieve that, so I will not be supporting that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Lynch?
I started at the beginning explaining what we're trying to do. I did say that we're not 100% certain this is going to be 100% correct, and that we need to slowly move the very big ship of East Suffolk into the correct position. There could be an awful lot that's correct about what you're saying, and I think it's something that possibly should be looked at, or should be looked at. I'm not quite 100% certain this time. We definitely don't want any political influence in it. We are talking about having a review in the next, we have 6 council meetings before the end of this council, and then it's going to be starting with the process of going in for a review. I would recommend we add that to the list, and maybe the number of words, those sort of things can be added to the list that gets put to Audit and Governance next time round, when we've had a chance to see how what we've got here works. And if it doesn't work, then we can start looking at what other changes we need to do. What we don't want to do is try and radically change it all at once. And then by radically changing it once, we can find we've gone way too much one way, and then we start swinging all over the place. Let's try and do small changes, but close. Democracy is really important. Everybody must have their say. But let's just try and make it little changes so that we get it right in the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Councillor Barr or Councillor Gooch?
Councillor Gooch, did you put your hand up?
Oops, goodness. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, and to all councillors as well, and leader. Apologies, I think this probably ought to have been a question earlier on, so I maybe missed the boat rather than kind of. So I've slipped out of questions rather effortlessly, in the reverse, really. But it's just really in relation, and it's probably to Councillor Lynch, in relation to paragraph 14 about previous decisions and motions. A motion or is 14.1. Motion or amendment to rescind a decision, etc., etc. 2 is signed by at least 1/3 of the members of the council. The question is really just in terms of how do we arrive at that sort of super majority figure of 1/3?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, we are debating an amendment to a recommendation.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I've skipped a point. I thought it was fallen.
You're
Because, yeah, I was assuming. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Pete. I must apologise for presuming that amendment is going to fall. So.
Councillor Barr.
You may speak. Well, just in summary, Steve, thank you. I take your point about wanting to find out what's going on, and of course, you know, we would never put a political spin on anything at all, because that's not our way. But I think there's just a minor problem there, because, as I said earlier, we're presented with papers a week before full council. Now, we don't always have the time to go back and look at those, but I do take your point that they've been through cabinet, so there's been a chance to have a bite of the cherry there. But it's really just to say, you know, and Jeff, thank you for that. I think, you know, that can go back to be considered in some way, whether we now look at the different timetables of motions, whereby you have a motion to put a motion in, and it's you know, presented to the cabinet in some raw form, you know, that we don't do it, you know, at full council, and that way, you know, there is a way of informing things, and then we all have that opportunity to debate it. But I welcome what you said. Thank you. In that case, I will withdraw the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. That clarifies things. Okay, Councillor Lynch, you get another go at speaking if you wish. Sorry?
Yeah,
So
Chair,
get very
point of order, Chair. Point of order, just, that's on the assumption that it is going to go to Audit and Governance. Thank you, and otherwise I would want the vote, you know which way we go, obviously. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to get a word in? No. So we'll go to the vote on the original recommendations. All those for? It's not too often. All those against? Any abstentions? One. So it's carried. Yeah, okay, so now we move on to item 10, Cabinet Members' Report and Outside Body Representatives' Reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the last time this evening. I hope members, thank you for your patience. This report contains updates from Cabinet members on their areas of responsibility, as well as updates from those members appointed to represent the Council on outside bodies. There is no recommendation, members, for this report. It's for information only. Can I please ask that the report is taken as read? However, I do invite any questions to individual members on the contents of their report as presented. Got that, Keith? Excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this report? Councillor Deacon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to my Horlicks. Yes, question to the Deputy Leader, if I may. The report refers to the click in local. What is being done to increase the buy-in to this? That's my first question. Secondly, is Suffolk Think Local? How many businesses area involved and are involved? Sorry, and how many are interested? And thirdly, survey of East Anglia, sorry, East Suffolk Town Centre businesses. What sort of responses has there been to the survey? Thank you.
Right.
Councillor Webber.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor Deacon. With regards to Click at Local, I'm slightly cautious in my words regarding to this, and I've got something I would say in regards to that. So at the beginning of last October, the council procured the services of a virtual high street company, Click at Local, under the government's Welcome Back Fund to support a safe return to high streets and help rebuild retail following the pandemic. The 6-month pilot, which had been due to conclude at the end of March, provided a single online point for shoppers to buy from independent local stores or businesses and have goods delivered straight to their door on the same or next day. As of February, there were 35 stores attached to the East Suffolk Click at Local, with an additional 23 signed up and waiting to go live. There have been a total of 433 orders, providing total revenue of over £8,000 to local businesses. At the end of last week, it came to the attention of our economic development team that Click at Local had concluded that its pre-existing delivery model was not financially sustainable as it functioned during the pandemic. We understand that as a result, orders, deliveries and collections have been paused and outstanding customer orders have been fully refunded. We've been informed that Click at Local hopes to continue to offer some form of online ordering and delivery for independent stores in the area. In the meantime, our chief concern is minimising the impact on affected businesses. Our economic development team officers have been in contact with Click at Local to request that these businesses are closely updated on progress. Officers are also ready and able to offer ongoing digital training for businesses which signed up to the scheme. So that provides a bit of detail regarding the click at local point. Regarding your questions on data to the other two initiatives, if you just write to me, I will get the latest numbers for you on that. Hopefully that provides you.
Thank you very much. I will send you an email.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor White?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor, for your answers there. On the renaissance of the East Anglian fisheries, do we have, as a council, any representation on that body? You certainly know your place.
It is myself, and along with officers, we've been providing support to the reef project for some time. Indeed, before East Suffolk Council came to fruition, I think my predecessor, Michael Ladd, along with Mark B, was seeing that project was progressed. And I know Peter Olds has been, always ready, and we have had launches in Parliament to progress the rightly the fishing sector, and the industry would like to see it become. So that work will continue. So with the CIC, we can see that there is extra opportunities to get funding. More recently, we've managed to secure some external funding, which was great news, along with the project program manager. We've slightly refined some of the findings that we sought to recommend to government following Brexit, but we'll continue to pursue those, and equally, and as importantly, we're seeking to broaden the attendance and input from fishermen from as far as King's Lynn all the way down to Felixstowe, to make sure that they can see that this project is worthwhile and that we're making as much as we can.
Just to follow up on that, I had a look at the documents yesterday, and there was mention of the value to our economy of sea anglers, particularly in terms of our own economic development. So I welcome what you said about that engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Craig?
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions for Councillor Back on this Suffolk Health Scrutiny report. On page 146, points B and C, can you give any information as to how they plan to raise awareness, bearing in mind that there shouldn't be digital assumption? And my other question is, on the next page, there are references to Health Watch Suffolk, and does East Suffolk have any direct representation at Health Watch Suffolk?
Could I give you written replies to those questions, please? And could you actually just email me with the questions? I haven't got a piece of paper and pen handy to you jot them down.
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Any more for any more? No. Okay. We'll move on to the next. Yeah. We'll move on to the next item, which there isn't a next item. I know you're all very sad. Before we finish this evening, I would like to thank you all for attending this evening, and I wish everybody a safe journey home. So, if you stay where you are until we've disconnected the live stream.